All right, my babies, and I welcome you back to one of those moments where I take a note I have and I make it into a video. And today's note, I think today's note is video number 517, man. Amazing. So today's note is, what does a moment need? And normally I go video and I actually like just write my thoughts. But with this one, I also wrote notes. What does a moment need? Which means it's something basically like to consider. And a note is basically something to consider. Every any other kind of video is probably just me like writing something down. But a note is like, no, hey, I'm asking myself a question. So what does a moment need? And I ask myself a question. And then I respond with, first thing is you look around your physical world. If there's nothing, and then you observe your mental checklist. So probably it feels that this would have come from a day where I just kind of like didn't necessarily feel productive. And it's those days where you kind of look at yourself and you go like, okay, like, am I being present? Or just like these kinds of thoughts, at least with me, because that's when your self-reflection kind of like matters, or at least makes more sense. So note, what does a moment need? First thing, you look at your physical world. If there's nothing, you look and observe your mental checklist. So my easiest interpretation of this is like the first thing you do is you look around you. Does something need your attention? Because that also is presence, right? Like actually noticing what's happening. And it could be something that needs your attention or needs your initiative. So like if you look around you, I experienced that I think last week because I was in the house and I was like, okay, I wanted to wash this house 2 days ago, but I didn't. And so I wanted to leave for the actual mountains, and that's basically a 2 hour trip. And I was like, I'll do it when I come back. And then I thought to myself, I was like, I can leave now to the mountains. It's a 2 hour trip. It doesn't matter. And I have nothing to do there. I have to literally like set up and like prepare some things that I kind of like put in my mind before I actually go there. But then I go like, what's the difference between going by 11 and by 12? Like the coffee shop that I normally go to like do stuff is closed until 5 o'clock. So I figured, man, either way, I'm not actually like spending that time. And I rationalized me going back and going like, no, I would rather come back to a clean house or at least a washed house. So I finished the gym that day. I did my early walk and I finished my gym that day. And I came back and before taking a shower, because that also makes more sense, just kind of like started scrubbing the house. And it was beautiful because in the process, I was always thinking, like, should I pour more water? No, you don't have to because this and that. And we're going through a drought in Lebanon, so we haven't had like water in like I think 3 weeks from the government. So everything kind of like falls into place in a certain kind of way. And this note kind of like took me back to a moment like that could have felt like that, where I kind of like just considering what I can do and trying to figure out what decisions are already made around me that I have to just kind of like get over. And it's funny because like I mentioned a mental checklist. It's because if nothing around you is calling for your attention, and that's mainly between house and work, right? Because it's a preset thing. These things could happen when you're walking like on the street and basically somebody screams for help or somebody stops to talk to you, right? Like these kinds of things are what like look around you. Does anything need your attention? And then from there, basically, if nothing needs your attention, which is mainly like when you're at home, when you're at work, when you're kind of like actively in somewhere where you normally do some things. It's a good way to look at it because we kind of have our predetermined setups, I guess, in different places, right? And that's what I like. That's my philosophy on how we actually integrate. So I want you to like we're sticking to the physical existence, sense with this conversation, specifically because like the other one is observe your mental checklist. Because there are things that you wanted to do, or there are things that fit your goals, or there are tasks that need to be completed. There are many things that kind of like are on your mind. So that's what I meant by mental checklist. But I want us to imagine the physical realm as the world that we actually like, the shared reality of this world, or the shared world. Yeah. So, anyways, shared reality, let's say. We have a neutral spot, which is home. All of us do. And it's funny because, like, uh, it's the easiest neutral spot to have. But if you don't like being at home, that's basically a bit more, I guess, on the extroverted side. Uh, you probably have kind of like these neutral spots. And I say neutral. Why? Because these are the spots where you actually find yourself. Now, it could be work, it could be some like cafe somewhere, it could be some art gallery. We kind of like, depending on the relationship that we have with the environments, with the physical environments we go to, that basically becomes like a place for us to kind of like see differently, see more of. If you go to a place once, you're barely going to remember anything from it. But eventually, like, if you keep going to the place, then it kind of like creates its own place in your mind. Your interactions with people, the characteristics you actually invoke when you're actually in that place are probably different than if you're in somewhere else or something like this. And we tend to like do that, whether unconsciously or subconsciously or unconsciously. So the first thing is you look around your physical world, and if there's nothing, then you basically revert to like, okay, what did I want to do? And I think that's a strong statement because you kind of like are more with yourself in, instead of being with people. And the reason I say that is because like with people we can be responsive and reactive, and it's very hard for us to find the people that we can interact with properly, right? So it's either a social setting where you kind of like right, you have that kind of like back and forth, completely lacking in any kind of like part of you that might offend people. Let's word it that way because that's how people tend to kind of like reflect on themselves in social situations. Specifically, I'm pointing at people because, like, interacting with people is hard because to interact with somebody, you have to build trust, you have to build like some form of common interest, you have to build something, whether it is shared interests, shared hobbies, shared respect, shared trust. You build something, ideally, you build them all as in a friend or like in family or like something like this. So when you're outside, it's not as neutral because other factors, other variables, which are people, are always involved. So like you kind of like it's just more of a physical zone, and there is where you kind of like as well do stuff. Whether it's at work, you kind of like are thinking about work stuff. When you're for me in a coffee shop, I'm thinking about writing stuff and learning stuff. When I'm at home, I'm thinking more either like watching stuff or working or like making videos or like researching something and taking notes. Like it becomes a lot more interactive, these things with me, simply because I've established like this zone a certain kind of way. And it's funny because like the same environment, right? Like I'm sitting at home right now. This is an environment where I always shoot my videos. And the desk behind is the environment where I always like do work. Funny enough, over there, if I'm working and I have to research something, I come here. I'm more effective researching something here than I am over there. For some reason, that space feels exactly like work. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you look around your physical world, you look around and you see like what needs to be done, what decision needs to be taken. And I think that's a perfect way for you to kind of like call yourself to where you are. And then after that, remember, you're not the one taking decisions. There are things that you kind of like intentionally want to do, and decisions that lead to it pop up in front of you. Already made, all you have to do is take action or not, right? So basically, after that, then you go and observe your mental checklist. checklist, because like what I mean by mental checklist, like maybe you're in the wrong place. Like if there's nothing to do in the house and there's stuff that needs to be done, where can they possibly get done? Sometimes you have to go fucking adventuring, but sometimes you go to places you're used to. Like last week, I remember I was sitting at the house and I was feeling like something wanted to come out of me, and I know like it can't happen at the house because I need some walking and I need kind of like the whole like setup with like a computer, like earphones that don't play music, but just me randomly doing things until I start writing what's on my mind. And beautiful poem came out of it. But I left the house. I'm not a tree. My roots are not planted. I left the house. So that's where the mental checklist kind of like, okay, points out the different locations that support this. And then basically your presence is needed elsewhere. It's the best way you can actually think about it. The reason you're not present here is because your presence is needed out there. And so basically, like, whenever you feel you're not present, it's basically because your mind is present somewhere else. And you are conducting kind of like the whole filtering process in order to see more clearly where that place would be, how it would look like, and this is huge. Oof, oof, yeah, kind of like so fucking beautiful. Okay, kind of like like whatever you need to deal with that would make you feel grounded, because it's an interaction. If you're not feeling present, then it's not here, it's somewhere else. Wow, thank you guys. It's a video. I'm actually like mind blown. I didn't think this would have this much of an effect on me. It's a video. Peace out.